Today on Arts for Life's virtual studio, we'll be making paper cookie plate collages together. Stay tuned and I'll tell you exactly what materials you'll need and walk you through the project step by step. So let's get creating. Hi everyone, my name is Katharine and I'm the program coordinator with Arts for Life at Duke Children's Hospital. And welcome to our virtual studio where we believe that art is for everyone. Today, we're going to be making paper cookie collages together. While these don't taste quite as good as real cookies, they certainly look delicious and are a lot of fun to make. So let me show you what kind of materials we're going to need to make our project together today. The first thing you'll need are several sheets of paper. You can use colorful paper or white paper. If you're using white paper, you can color it any way you'd like to make it look exactly the way you want. You can even use patterned paper for parts of this project. So if you have some wrapping paper or some newspaper, we can use that too. The other thing I'll mention about the paper is you'll want one sheet that's a little bit bigger so you can trace the size of the plate for your cookies, but the rest of your paper can be smaller, even some scraps as well. You'll also need some scissors to do some cutting and maybe somebody nearby to help you cut if you want a little assistance with that. And either tape or a glue stick. Liquid glue works too. The easiest thing for this project is usually a glue stick, but anything that sticks will work. You'll also need some drawing materials. So I have some crayons as well as some markers, but you can really use anything you have nearby or anything you really like. These are the things we'll use to draw some little decorations on your cookies towards the end. A pencil might also be really helpful for tracing all the steps at the beginning, so have one on hand if you'd like. Finally, the last thing that'll be helpful for this project but isn't totally necessary are some round things to trace to make all of your cookie shapes. So I have here a plastic cup, which actually has 2 size circles on it. Paper cups work really well too. Even things like old CDs or old DVDs, paper plates are a great option too. So if you have anything nearby that's different sizes of circles, that'll be most helpful. But remember, you can always freehand it too if you don't have anything to trace. Finally, as a fun little bonus, since we're making paper cookies, you could always use real cookie cutters, if you can see these. So if you have any real cookie cutters nearby, or if you even have any cookie cutters that you'd use to play with Play-Doh or Model Magic or something like that, you can use those as well to make some fun cookie shapes. So now that you know all the materials we'll need for our project today, we'll adjust the camera so we can get started making our paper cookies. Now that you can see what I have set up on my art table, we'll get started on our project. Remember, you might be using slightly different art materials than I am, but don't worry about that. We'll still be doing the same steps together. So this is the example we looked at together just a second ago, and you can see all the different cookies on the background paper plate. So we're going to work on 4 basic steps to get this project all done. First, we're going to trace the shapes that we'll be cutting out. Then we'll use scissors to cut all the pieces out. Then we'll decorate with drawing materials, and finally we'll glue everything all together. And this is a good part to stop for just a second and remind you that you can always pause this video if you need a few extra minutes to work on any of the steps. And you can also start the entire video over again if that's easier for you too. So again, our first step today is going to be tracing all of these shapes. So I'm going to move our example out of the way so we have room to do some of that tracing. So now you'll need to get the paper we talked about earlier, a pencil or something else to trace with. I'm going to be using a black pen because I know I'll be able to see it on all of my paper. And you'll need some things to trace. So in my case, I have a couple of cups I'm going to be using, as well as a paper plate that I'll be tracing. So these are just a few examples. You're welcome to use anything else you may have or that you may be able to ask your parents, your nurse, or an older sibling for. Tracing is always an option because it's a little bit easier to get started, but you can also freehand any of these shapes. So the first shape I'm going to work on is, from our example, this light blue paper plate for the background. So I'm going to use an actual paper plate because it's my biggest circle I have to trace. And flip it over on the paper and trace along the outside edge of it. And if your trace along the outside edge gets a little bumpy or doesn't connect all the way, that's absolutely fine because we'll be cutting it out a little bit later, so it won't have to match all the way up, all the way around. So now we have the background piece for our cookies. I'm gonna move the paper plate out of the way. So my background will have some blue background. Now I'm going to move that out of the way and grab a couple of my pieces of smaller scrap paper where I'm going to be cutting out the cookie shapes. So the cup I have, you'll see, has a smaller side and a bigger side. That's a great way to use it so that you have different shape and different size cookies. So I'll trace some small circles and I'll trace some big circles. So we have different colors too. You can see here I have some pink paper and some brown paper. You can use whatever colors you like because we'll also be decorating them and adding more colors and patterns later. So once you've got your background plate shaped traced and a few different size and different color cookie circles traced, you can also think about if there are any other things you want to trace or draw to add to your cookies. So here are two more pieces of paper that I'm going to use because I happen to have an actual cookie cutter, which is what we talked about in our materials at the beginning of the video. So if you have something like this, you can also use this as a fun shape to trace. These can be sometimes a little tricky, so you might want to ask for some help for someone to hold it so you can trace along the outside. But this is kind of a fun way to use cookie cutters or even Play-Doh cutters or Model Magic cutters, something you use with clay, to make some different kinds of cookie shapes too. So you can use real cookie cutters to trace, and remember you can also do things like freehand draw. So I'm gonna freehand draw this heart shape because I want to have a heart cookie on my next paper plate. So now that we've got the outlines of all the shapes we need, some freehand, some cookie cutter traced, some circles, and the background paper plate, now we'll work on cutting all of those out. So I have a few of those shapes already cut out so we can jump to the next part of the project. But what I am gonna do is I'm gonna cut out this heart shape that I free drew so that we can add that to our stack of cookie shapes. So I'll cut out this heart and you'll see I'm gonna follow the line that I drew, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're gonna be adding lots of different things to it, and you can even flip it over if you want to. Okay. And even though we're done cutting out our shapes, here's some of my other ones. These are the circles I told you that I'd already pre-cut out. Even though we're done cutting out our shapes for our cookies and our plate, you may want to keep some paper nearby because we'll do a little bit more decorating with paper when we glue at the end of the project too. Okay, so I'm going to set all my cookie shapes over here to the side and just look at my paper plate background. So you might remember from the example that we started with, you can see back here, there's a little bit of decoration on the paper plate. So now's the time you get to decide if you want to add decoration to your plate or leave it plain just like it is. For this paper plate, I do think I'm going to add a little decoration. So now you can use whatever drawing materials you like. You might use crayons, markers, colored pencils, pens, whatever you have on hand or prefer. I'm going to use a black pen for right now. So for this design, I'm going to do a great big curlicue all the way around my paper plate. And this pattern that you put on your paper plate can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. The only thing that you want to keep in mind is that a lot of it's going to get covered up by your awesome paper cookies. So you might want to think about that when you're deciding how much time and energy you put into decorating your plate. So you can see I kind of did a pattern around the outside edge, but left a lot of the middle empty since I know that's going to get covered up by lots of cookies in just a little bit. Okay, so we've decorated our plate, and now we can get to decorating some of our cookies. One more time, I'm going to set the plate just up here so we have some space to decorate our cookies. So we've got some different colors. I've got some dark brown circles, some white circles, a heart, some little brown circles. And now's the really fun part where you get to decide how you're going to decorate each and every one of your cookies. You can make them all the same, or you can make every single one totally different. So what we'll start by decorating with first is using drawing materials. So for example, I have some crayons up here. Those are what I'm going to be using to decorate with drawing materials. One thing you can do is simply color your cookies. So I'm going to, since I have this nice white background, I'm going to color around the edges. This one I was thinking kind of looks like a sugar cookie. And now that you're getting ready to the decorating part, this is the really fun part where you can let your imagination go and decide all the kinds of cookies you might want to make or decorate for your cookie paper plate. It might be your favorite kind of cookie, or your best friend's favorite kind of cookie, or a totally imaginary flavor cookie that you've never had before but think would be really fun. So you can see I'm just coloring around the edges, and I'm going to actually color this whole thing pretty quickly because this color I just want to be the background of my cookie. And this is another part where you know that it doesn't matter what color your paper is necessarily, because again, you're going to get to decorate it any way you want to. All right, so I have kind of a sugar cookie color background on this circle. I'm going to set that to the side. And now this round one, I think I'm going to color a little bit of a funky cookie flavor. So I think I'm going to use this green and pretend I'm making a mint chocolate chip cookie. So I'm going to color this whole thing green. And again, I'm going to use this as kind of the background of my color. Pretend like it's mint cookie dough. It sounds pretty delicious to me. Did you all decide what flavor cookies you're making today? That's one of the toughest decisions you'll have to make when you're making this art project. So I've almost got this entirely colored around, and now I'm going to actually show you another kind of fun step that you can do if you want to add a different shape to some of your cookies. So let me put my crayon down and slide over our example one more time. You might remember seeing this one, this cookie in the background has kind of some bumpy edges. That cookie actually started just like this one. It was just a round circle traced, but then with some little divots cut around the side to make it have that kind of funky edge. So I'm going to grab a pair of scissors and show you how to do that on this. So what I'm going to do first is actually flip it over so I can draw the shape I want to cut out on the background. And this might be helpful to do just so you have a line to trace, or so you can show somebody else if somebody else is helping you cut something out, so they can help you cut it out. And you'll see this actually kind of looks like a flower. And just kind of a bumpy background. And now I can cut along that edge and I'm gonna have a different shaped cookie. But it started just like all the other ones with a round, tracing around a round cup. And you can see I'm trying to follow this line as I cut, but I'm not following it exactly, and that is totally fine. If you've ever made cookies before, you know sometimes when the dough is still raw and you try to make a shape, it gets a little stretched out or it gets cracked or something like that. But after you bake them and decorate them, they still taste just as good. And in this case, they're gonna look just as good. So I'll flip it over, and now you can see I have a different shape for my cookie. So there's 2 cookies colored. And now I'll show you another option you might like. On one of these brown circles, I'm going to use a lighter color and draw a squiggly shape in the background to look like icing. I'm going to fill this in. So this is a great time to use crayons or something called oil pastels. They're a little bit thicker and they draw really well on any color paper. And oil pastels really look like icing on these cookies, I think. So we keep going. Really get this white icing all over this chocolate cookie. I think it's a chocolate cookie. You guys might think it's a different flavor, I'm not sure. Could be, it might be cinnamon. That's another choice too. So I'll finish coloring this in with this white icing. Almost there. All right, so now you can see we've got some different options. And I broke the crayon, but you know what? That's totally fine because the crayon's gonna keep coloring even though I broke it. Extend my icing a little bit more. I like a lot of icing. So now you can see a couple different ways to color your cookies. You can color the whole shape. You can color the whole thing, but cut out a new shape. You can color just part of it to add some icing right in the middle. And one final way you can decorate with drawing materials, look at this itty bitty little chocolate cookie right here, is to draw a pattern on it. So I'm gonna get my pen again, and I think this time I'm gonna draw a little flower in the middle of this cookie. Sometimes cookies have a little bit of a stamped image on it, so the dough kind of rises and falls in different sections. So that's what I was thinking about for this cookie. And I'll do some details in the edges. So again, this is just one more option for how you can decorate a cookie by drawing on it. So you can do simple lines, or you can do some different colors too. Okay, so now that we have done some decorating with drawing materials, the next thing we'll do is some decorating by gluing. So get your glue stick. We talked earlier that a glue stick or some tape works fine for this project. This is the part where a glue stick might be just a little bit easier. So one thing you can do to help decorate is create some sprinkles. If you can see these tiny little pieces of paper in my hand, these are just scraps of paper that I cut up into small little rectangles and squares so that I can glue them onto the cookies and make it look like sprinkles. So what I'm gonna do for that is I'm actually gonna take my glue stick and I'm gonna put glue all over the top of this cookie. So since these pieces are so tiny, I'm actually going to use way more glue than I need to get started to help things stick. So now that there's glue all over this, I can pick up little pieces and just put them down. So if you decide to glue this way, your fingers might get a little gluey, a little sticky, but you can always wash your hands or use a cleaning wipe or something like that to get them clean too. You can see, since there's glue everywhere, they just need a little bit of a push down to get to stick. And since these look like sprinkles, I'm just doing this in a random order. So they look like you really did just shake a can of sprinkles right on top of the cookie. And of course you can do this with any colors you like. If you really like rainbow sprinkles, you can make sure you have every single color of the rainbow when you make your sprinkles. Or if you only want certain colors, those can be the colors you cut out, whatever you like. And you can add as many or as few as you want. So I think that cookie's got enough sprinkles on it. So we'll set this cookie to the side. And another thing you can actually use, if you have one in your house or nearby, is a hole puncher. And so those tiny little circles that hole punchers make when they're punching out circles are another great way to create some sprinkles. So if you can punch out a whole bunch of different colors and then empty the hole punch, you'll get these nice little circles you can glue on too. So I'll leave those right here on the table so I can add those. I think one other thing I'm gonna do is I'm looking at my mint chocolate chip cookie and I wanna cut out some special shapes for this cookie. So I am gonna grab a piece of brown paper to be my chocolate chips. And I am going to grab my pair of scissors and I am going to cut out some different chocolate chips. But you know what I just realized? Another way I can do this, we talked about cutting it out, but you can also tear shapes. So let's tear these pieces just to have a different texture on your cookies. So I'm gonna tear some little brown pieces that really look like chocolate chunks in my cookie. That looks really delicious. Tear a few more. Okay, so now we have some chocolate chips for our cookie. We'll glue those down. And we can do the same thing we did with the sprinkle cookie by putting glue all over the background. This works with a glue stick. I would not do this if you have liquid glue. I would glue each piece down individually. But with a glue stick, you can put the glue in the background and then push down the pieces on that sticky glue and then leave your cookie over to the side to dry for a little bit and it'll work out just fine. All right, 2 more chocolate chunks. Okay. So we've got a sprinkle cookie decorated, a chocolate chunk cookie decorated, a little brown cookie decorated. So I still need to decorate this icing one, my heart, and I wanted to show you one other choice you can do to add some icing to a bigger cookie. You can cut out a piece of paper in that icing shape too. So this looks like kind of pink strawberry icing. I'm gonna put glue on the background of this and glue that on a slightly bigger circle. And you can see how that starts to look like icing on this cookie too. So now I've got 2 icings. I'm gonna set one to the side just so I have a little bit more space again. And on this one, I'm gonna add some of these circle sprinkles we talked about. So a little bit more glue in the background. And I'm gonna add these just randomly. But we're really getting close to our cookies being all decorated. So we can put them on our paper plate. You can see my fingers are starting to get sticky because all the little circles are sticking to my fingers. All right. It's looking delicious, almost ready. Okay, so we've got sprinkles on that cookie. All kinds of decorated. And I think for this one, I'm gonna leave it just like it is. It's just gonna be a pink heart shape. So you can know that you can leave cookies just the shape they are. They don't have to be decorated at all if you don't want to. You can glue on paper for icing or for sprinkles that you used a hole punch for, or you can use sprinkles that you just cut out freehand in little rectangles. You can also draw on a cookie for different shapes with pens, markers, crayons, or anything like that. And finally, you can tear paper to glue onto your cookie. So that's so many different ways you can decorate your cookies. Now that you have this delicious stack of cookies, you get to glue them onto your plate. So when you get ready to do this, sometimes it's helpful to kind of lay out your cookies before you glue them down so you can decide which ones you want on top, which ones you want on the bottom, how much space you have for your cookies. Like, I'm wondering if I have enough space for all my cookies. I might not. I might need to leave my heart as a snack for later. But I think This is where you can kind of play with them and do different orders, different designs. But I think that's what I'm gonna do. So when you get ready to glue, you'll want to take the cookie that you have on the bottom. In my case, it's this one right here. And that's the one you'll want to glue down first. So grab your glue stick again and put glue all over the back of the one that you have on the bottom. You can kind of slide it under some of those and give it a good push down to make sure it really sticks. All right, now I'm gonna put some glue on the back of this one. There we go. Slide it across over here. Push it down really hard to make sure it really sticks. Add some glue on my kind of flower shaped cookie. That one's gonna sit on top. I like those chocolate chunks. And finally, this tiny little cookie. This bite-sized cookie is gonna go right over here on the edge, kind of on top of everything. So you've got all your cookies fitted on your plate. And you have finished your paper cookie plate. So these are just a few of the ways you can do it, but remember you can always make up your own cookies using your own shapes, your own decoration styles, your own ideas, and your own flavors. So since that's the one we made together, we'll look one more time at the example we started earlier. Just as a reminder, you can do cookies that you just draw on, cookies that you glue cutout paper on or hole punched paper on, cookies that you cut out the shape, cookies that you cut out the icing, and even cookies that you use cookie cutters to cut out the shape, like these little stars. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this project. So it's really fun and you can use your creativity all sorts of different ways. Another fun thing you can do for this project, if you want to take it even one step further, is you can ask if you can borrow a real plate and make a whole bunch of cookies to fill up a real plate. Then you can play with them like you have all sorts of different flavors of cookies. They won't taste as good as real cookies, but they are really fun to make. So in just 1 second, we will adjust the camera one more time so we can wrap up our time together. Thank you so much for tuning in to Arts for Life's virtual studio today. I hope you enjoyed creating with me as much as I enjoyed creating with you today. One more time, here's an example of our finished project, our paper cookie plate collage. Yours might look a little bit different than this one, but that's one of the greatest things about art. Different artists make the same project and create a totally unique masterpiece. I know yours looks wonderful. If you'd like to show us what you made today, please post a picture in the comments below. I'd love to see what flavors of cookies you picked out. Remember, art is for everyone.